Hey everybody, Pastor Kevin Swann here again, and I am so excited about this Bible study series we're about to do. This little book has made a tremendous difference in my life personally and in the ministry, and I want to thank Pastor Tom Rainer for writing this book and others on church dynamics and church leadership and how things are functioning in our churches. This book is what we're studying in our Bible study series. It's called I Am a Church Member. And if you're not a part of the Ivy family, you can go on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, anywhere, and just download it, or you can go to the store and purchase it. If not, we're still going to have a Bible study sheet that will give you some of the messages and the summaries of what's covered in the chapters. But I want you to get the book and read it. I'm guaranteeing you it'll bless your life. And so we're going to go through the book. Today's Bible study is just the introduction, the first 7 pages of the book. It's so much in the 7 pages that we're devoting the entire Bible study to it. So let's get started. I Am a Church Member, Bible Study Series Part 1, the introduction. I know it's going to bless you. Let's get started.
Let's get started with this first of many of the Bible study series, I Am a Church Member. Now, the goals for this Bible study series is that we want to critically examine what it means to be a church member. We hear that term often, sometimes loosely. People say I'm a church member and, all those things, but we want to know after this study, what does it mean to be a church member from God's point of view, not from ours, but from God's. That's very important. We could have our own definitions, but God is the one that we should be addressing and trying to figure out. Number 2, we want to generate ideas that will help all church members to become more engaged in the life of the church and ministry. That really is the ultimate goal. And I can tell you that if you are part of any church, any local assembly, your pastor, I guarantee you one of the things that's on your pastor's mind the most is this point right here. How can more members be engaged in the life of the church and ministry? Because it is true, when you have more participation, when you have more people doing the work of the ministry, it makes it easier on everyone, and you can get things done in a quicker fashion. And then number 3, we want to facilitate some discussion on barriers to effective church ministry. What things prevent us from really being effective church members and having effective church ministry? And so with this video, there'll be times I'll tell you to pause it, and maybe if you're with someone, you can have some dialogue and discussion on the question, or if you're by yourself, then you can pause the video and just jot your answer down. So either way, we want you to kind of think through what the questions will be as we move forward. So having said that, the book was written by Tom Rainer, and I do want to thank Pastor Rainer for an excellent book that he wrote. Very small book, very short in nature, only 70-some pages, 80 at the most, but every page is something effective. And so we want to thank Pastor Rainer in his work and labor for the Lord in writing this book. It has been a blessing to me already and to our congregation as we've gone through this series. And I know that other pastors have also used this book in various settings. And so we thank Pastor Rainer. So here we go. Opening discussion question. And again, hopefully you're watching this video with someone and you can have this discussion. But if not, you can pause the video and write your answer down separately. And here's the question. This is your own opinion. What exactly is a church member? If and how would you describe it, church membership, to someone who doesn't go to church? If I didn't go to church and we were having conversation, somewhere at my house, or maybe we're at a coffee shop, or wherever the case might be, and you say, I'm a member of whatever church you attend, and I say, well, what is that? What's a church member? What does that mean? How would you explain that to me? So let's take some time, pause the video, have some discussion, and come back, and we'll continue on with our Bible study series. Okay, we're back, and again, this is the question that we want to lead with. This is a very important question. What exactly is a church member? How would you describe it to someone? I'm a member of such and such a church. Well, that's great, but ultimately, what does that mean? Well, let me give you some modern day statistics, because I think most of us who are church members believe that there's benefit in church membership. There's a benefit in and being involved in the church and being a part of the church and all of those things. But statistically speaking, church membership is not viewed the same to outsiders as it is to insiders. And this is significant. From the book, and this is on page 5, and today all we're doing is the introduction, the first 7 pages of the book. From the book, out of 557 churches that Pastor Rayner and his staff surveyed, get this, 90%, 9 out of 10 of those churches were declining in church membership or growing slower than the pace of the communities in which they serve. That is amazing. Most churches are not growing. Most churches are declining. And we have to ask ourselves a legitimate question. If we believe that church membership is beneficial, if we believe there's some substance to it, then why are so many churches losing members? Why are so many churches foreclosing? Why are so many churches going out of business completely if more people are living than ever before in our country? If the communities in which the churches are in are growing, why aren't the churches at least matching the rate and percentage of growth in the community? It's a very troubling statistic, and one that we need to look at. To take it a step further, according to the book, those born before 1946, it was estimated that during that era, 66% of those living in the United States during that time were Christian. Those born before 1946. Those born between after 1980 and 2000, what is called the millennial generation, 15% are now classified as Christian. So that means that within a 60-year period, 70-year period, you go from 66% of our country in that generation at that time to 15%. We have almost lost an entire generation as it pertains to Christianity and how people are viewing our religion, and more importantly, church membership. People simply aren't joining across the country. Now, there are churches individually that are doing well, but as a whole, many churches are struggling, losing members, and it's a very, very challenging situation. So, as we look at the book, and again, we're just doing the introduction today, and it's pages 1 through 7. There's a story in the book about two men, and the man Michael and Liam, and Michael and Liam were members of a church. They met in a Bible study group, as the author writes, and then they committed themselves to meeting once a week for breakfast. And so what they found was that they had a lot of things in common. They liked sports. They were roughly a similar age. One was 49. One was 41. The other was 39. Both of them had 3 children. So there was a lot of commonality in terms of how they got along. And so what once started as a one-time breakfast ended up now being a once-a-week breakfast every Monday faithfully at 6 a.m. But during that process, something happened. Liam began to shift, and even in his small Bible study group, as the author writes, he became distant and also more cynical about certain things in his comments. And then one day, after having breakfast, as they normally do, Liam approached Michael and said very directly, "My wife Lena and I have decided that we're going to leave the church." Michael was stunned, but he had also known that there was something that was going on. And he didn't press the issue, but he, according to the author, lovingly asked Liam, "Okay, for what reason are you choosing to leave the church?" And Liam appeared to be ready to vent and give his answers. And the first one was, "The pastor is not feeding us. And we want deeper truths. And the pastor is not feeding us." And you don't know how many times I have heard this statement before, especially in our church, in particular from people who may have come from another ministry, and one of the first things that they want to say is, "We weren't being fed." But I look at them and I see their size, and they look like adults. And the last I checked, adults typically know how to feed themselves. I'm going to leave that alone. Number 2, Liam said that there are some good people in the church, but then there are also some in the church that are full of hypocrites. He went on to say that there was a member of the church who, when they went to the basketball game, his son was playing, and the father didn't like some of the calls, and he was yelling at the referees, and he was embarrassing Liam because he knew that the guy was a member of the church. Or there was somebody in the church who claimed to be a leader or a pillar of the church and had found out that they'd been having an affair for over a year. And the more Liam found out about church business, the more disgruntled and dissatisfied he came. And he was explaining this to Michael as the story goes. I like you, Mike. I like your family. But there are just too many hypocrites in the church, people who are doing wrong. Let me also put a nugget here that if the church is growing, the church will be messy at times. And the truth of the matter is, the church and individuals, people grow at different stages. And so you need to understand that people are going through their process. And just because people are in church doesn't mean that they're all the way where they need to be. Church really is a hospital for the soul. Then the third one was the leadership doesn't seem to care for the people, visits or calls or all these things. In other words, Liam was upset that his father-in-law was sick and that the pastor of the church didn't go visit the father-in-law. But what Liam didn't mention was the fact that the father-in-law lived 50 miles away. The pastor did, in fact, call and reach out to the father-in-law and prayed for the father-in-law over the phone. But it didn't seem to matter because the pastor didn't go. So now the church doesn't care about the people because the leadership didn't go. And it seems that if the pastor doesn't do it, then it didn't happen. No matter if the deacon goes or another minister goes. If the pastor doesn't do it, then the whole church doesn't care. And you don't know how many times I personally have heard that one as well as pastor of a church, that one person has to do all of the work. And if the one person doesn't do it, then it negates what other people are doing. So Liam summarized his venting and his process by saying to Michael in this conversation, you and your wife Karen and your children, y'all are real good people. We love you. We appreciate you. We thank God for you. But we just don't understand how it is that you can faithfully serve in a congregation knowing all of these things that are going on. That people are hypocrites and all kinds of stuff that are going on, and yet you seem to serve faithfully. And the concluding statement of the story is what struck me, is that Liam finally told Michael, he said, I guess we are really two different types of church members. And so that raises a very interesting question that I want to pose to you. Which member or type of member are you? If you are a member of a church, are you closer to Michael, one who serves faithfully, one who understands that people in the church aren't perfect, they're going to have issues, there are going to be conflicts every now and again, but that doesn't stop you from faithfully serving? Or are you going to be more like Liam, one who comes to church and looks for the flaws, one who comes and sees the negative, one who wants to point out the things that aren't going necessarily right? The truth of the matter is, if you were to take a survey, which type of member do you think exists in most churches? Michael's of the world or the Liams? And it has been my belief that many people believe that Liam is the more representative of the type of member that exists in churches versus Michael. And that is one of the reasons, in my view, why the millennial generation does not attend church. Because they are more concerned about authentic ministry and leadership, and they're drawn to people who are real and who are authentic. And if they're looking at and seeing a Liam in leadership or in a position in the church who does things but then is critical and just sees things and then is, all these things, they're more likely not to stay. So which one are you? Are you faithful in spite of? Or do you find that there are certain things that are wrong, and those things that are wrong preclude you from wanting to stay at the church? Now, to be fair, Liam did have some legitimate points. And the point is, the pastor's job is to feed the sheep. That's the primary responsibility. When Jesus restored Peter, he said, if you love me, feed my sheep. Feeding is an important responsibility of a pastor, and feeding is linked to teaching as well as preaching. Pastor's role is to teach the deeper truths and the things of God. And quite frankly, some pastors don't do a good enough job of teaching. So there is some truth in that being fed. Number two, there are people in the church that are hypocrites. There are leaders who sometimes look a certain way in church and then act completely different once they leave the church. And that is a valid point. But what I want to suggest to you is that all of Liam's concerns are not the main issue of why churches are struggling today as a whole. The main issue, according to the author, is that congregations are weak because many church members have lost the biblical, let me emphasize, biblical understanding of what it means to be a church member. And because we don't have a biblical understanding, we then take church and rate it according to a secular understanding of church membership. And so whatever we have membership in the world, we then take that same mindset and approach and we carry it over to the church. So for example, if you are a member of a fraternity or sorority or a nonprofit organization or any group, if you're a member of the YMCA or anything along those lines, you go, you pay your dues, and after you pay your dues, then you say or determine what additional commitment you want to offer to that organization. But because you have paid your dues, then you automatically believe you have certain rights and responsibilities, you're in good standing, and everybody is fine. That is a secular version of membership. And unfortunately, many people take that same mentality and they bring it to the church because they think if I paid my tithe or I've given money to the church, then it now means I'm in good standing. And it also means that I can then pick and choose what I want to do in the church because I have paid and I'm up to date and current. And that is the problem. You cannot equate secular membership to an organization and think that it is the same as biblical membership in the church. And because of that, congregations are weak in nature because we don't understand the difference between the two. Here's the author's point. Many church members expect others to feed us, care for us, and serve us. And you don't know how many times when I've gone through new members orientation and I've asked people how and why they've joined the church, the answer that I get is similar to how people pick and choose Walmart. Well, you know, Walmart has one-stop shopping. So people say, well, I like what you offer for the kids. I like what you offer for me. I like what you offer. And so basically what you're doing is you're creating a checklist of things and you're checking off why you like the church, because you're starting off with the mentality from the very beginning, the church can do this for me. That's the danger. People should join the church saying, I like what I see. God has led me here, and here is what I can contribute. But when you start off with what you are fed, care, and serve, then the basis of your membership will always be on what you're getting, not what you're giving. Number two, many church members don't like hypocrites. And we're quick to point out hypocrites and what people are doing wrong, but people don't address their own hypocrisies. The person that we need to deal with is ourselves, but many times church members don't deal with themselves. They would rather deal with other people. But the song says, it is me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my mother, not my father, but it is me, O Lord. And if we will concentrate more on our own hypocrisies, our own issues, our own sins, our own inadequacies, and leave other people alone, maybe we will be more willing to extend grace to them and peace to them, because we know how many times we have messed up on our own. The third thing is this: many churches are weak because we have members who have turned the meaning of membership upside down. We think membership is more for me and less of what I do. And as a result of that, you have selfish people walking around in the church in the name of the Lord who are only satisfied as long as they get what they want, and they have a tendency to rate the church service, rate the choir, how well they sang, rate the preacher and how well the preacher preached. And we have weak, selfish churches because we have members who think that the service and the membership and everything should be catered to them. So, in the beginning of this, I asked you a question. What exactly, in your opinion, is a church member? And there is a simple answer to that question. The answer is membership in the church should be no less than membership in the body of Christ. And the only way to be a member of the body of Christ is you should be saved. And once you are saved, God gifts you with spiritual gifts and certain abilities to fit within the larger context. Now, here's what we need to understand. The reason why God gave us local assemblies, local churches, is because the body of Christ is too large to be seen. But when we look at local churches should function like the larger body of Christ, where everybody in the church is operating in a specific area, exercising their particular gift, all for the glory of God, because God made us that way. Membership in the church should equal membership in the body of Christ. And the church should be reflective of that, no less. And you can't be a member of Christ if you can't be a member of Christ unless you have the gift of the Spirit, and God gives you that and places you in the body. Membership in the church should be the same way. But unfortunately, we have a lot of members on the church roll who are not saved and still going to hell. Being a true church member, then, is not about privilege. It is not about how gifted you are. Being a true church member is not about status, what you are outside of the church, or what position that you hold in the world. And unfortunately, many churches pick leaders based on what people do in the world. So if somebody is a banker, if somebody is a lawyer, then that automatically means that they can be an effective church ministry leader. Now, in some cases, that can be true. But also, it could be the reverse, because some bankers are crooks. And so you got to be careful about how you choose people based on status. Being a true church member is not about family history in the church. And you hear this all the time. We've been members of this church all our lives, and we are then, get this, entitled to certain things because we've been members of this church. And we ought to be sitting in the same seat because we've been sitting in this seat for 50 years. And this is where we've always sat. And our name is on the placard on the pew. And this is our business. We are entitled. And we've been here before this pastor. And we'll be here after this pastor leaves because it is entitlement. An entitlement family is what has destroyed and eroded the church. This mindset of what the church should do for me is what is killing church membership and why ministries are losing their impact and effectiveness. But being a true church member then is about loving. It is about serving. It is about meeting other people's needs. Because at the end of the day, what people really want is to be loved and valued and appreciated. And people will flock to that even before they hear the preacher preach. If they walk in the door and they feel a sense of appreciation, it means something to people. Church membership is about serving others and helping others and meeting people's needs. And it's also about being a team player. It's not about me, but it's about the benefit of the group, and all for the glory of God. Whether I get the solo or not, it's for the glory of God. Whether I pray today or not, it's for the glory of God. And I'm willing to be a team player. And unfortunately, most members don't function this way. So here's the closing discussion question. I hope you've enjoyed this. I am so excited about this Bible study series. And again, I want to thank Pastor Rainer for writing this book. I am a church member. Here's what we want to leave with today. From this Bible study today, what will you do to be a better church member? What are you going to commit to doing from now on as a result of understanding better what you need to do to be a church member. I want you to think about that, and I want you to write it down on your page. I want you to write it down. I am committing to doing this, being a church member. Now, next Bible study, I want you to read chapter 1, because we're going to look at chapter 1, and it is, I will be a functioning church member. I will be a functioning church member. I am so fired up and excited about this Bible study series. I hope it has blessed you, and thank you for tuning in.
Wow, can you believe all of that was just in 7 pages? That's just the introduction. I'm so excited about chapter 1. I will be a functioning church member. It is time that we as church members really understand the biblical mandate and call to be a church member, and not get so consumed and caught up in what secular definitions of membership is all about. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, pick up the book and read chapter 1 before you go to the next video. Until the next time, be blessed and be a blessing to someone else. Take care.